An attacker can use XSS to send a malicious script to an unsuspecting user.
I am having a very bad day.
The end users, a browser, has no way to know that the script should not be trusted. Hello. My name is Marc Drouinaud Jr. If you're new here, I just relay videos. Today I'm going to go over cross-site scripting, and this is courtesy of Kirsten S. at OWASP. So I'm going to give you an overview. Cross-site scripting attacks are a type of injection in which malicious scripts are injected into otherwise benign and trusted websites. Cross-site scripting, also known as XSS, attacks occur when an attacker uses a web application to send malicious code, generally in the form of a browser-side script, to a different end user. Flaws that allow these attacks to succeed are quite widespread and occur anywhere a web application uses input from a user within the output it generates without validating or encoding it.
It must be seen.
An attacker can use XSS to send a malicious script to an unsuspecting user. The end users, a browser, has no way to know that the script should not be trusted and will execute the script. Because it thinks the script came from a trusted source, the malicious script can access any cookies, session tokens, or other sensitive information retained by the browser and used with that site. Here is a description. So cross-site scripting, also known as XSS, attacks occur when 1. Data enters a web application through an untrusted source, most frequently a web request. 2. The data is included in dynamic content that is sent to a web user without being validated for malicious content. The malicious content sent to the web browser often takes the form of a segment of JavaScript, but may also include HTML, Flash, or any other type of code that the browser may execute. The variety of attacks based on XSS is almost limitless, but they commonly include transmitting private data, like cookies or other session information, to the attacker, redirecting the victim to web content controlled by the attacker, or performing other malicious operations on the user's machine under the guise of the vulnerable site. We have stored and reflected XSS attacks. These attacks can generally be categorized into 2 categories: stored and reflected. There is a third, much less well-known type as the attack called DOM based that is going to be discussed separately. Stored XSS attacks. Stored XSS attacks are those where the injected script is permanently stored on the target servers, such as in a database, in a message forum, visitor log, comment field, etc. The victim then retrieves the malicious script from the server when it requests the stored information. Stored XSS is also sometimes referred to as persistent or type I XSS. Next, we have blind cross-site scripting. Blind cross-site scripting is a form of persistent XSS. It generally occurs when the attacker's payload saved on the server and reflected back to the victim from the backend application. For example, in feedback forums, an attacker can submit the malicious payload using the form, and once the backend user admin of the application will open the attacker's submitted form via the backend application, the attacker's payload will get executed. Blind cross-site scripting is hard to confirm in the real-world scenario, but one of the best tools for this is XSS Hunter. Next, we have reflected XSS attacks. Reflected attacks are those where the injected script is reflected off the web server, such as in an error message, search result, or any other response that includes some or all of the input sent to the server as part of the request. Reflected attacks are delivered to victims via another route, such as in an email message or on some other website. When a user is tricked into clicking on a malicious link, submitting a specifically crafted form, or even just browsing to a malicious site, the injected code travels to the vulnerable website, which reflects the attack back to the user's browser. The browser then executes the code because it came from a trusted server. Reflected XSS is also sometimes referred to as non-persistent or type 2 XSS. Here are some other types of XSS vulnerabilities. In addition to stored and reflected XSS, another type of XSS, a DOM-based XSS, was identified by Amit Klein in 2005. OWASP recommends the XSS categorization as described in the OWEPS articles, types of cross-scripting, which covers all these XSS terms, organizing them into a matrix of stored versus reflected XSS and server versus client XSS, where DOM-based XSS is a subset of client XSS. XSS attack consequences. The consequences of an XSS attack is the same regardless of whether it is stored or reflected or DOM based. The difference is in how the payload arrives at the server. Do not be fooled into thinking that a read-only or broadchareware site is not vulnerable to a serious reflected XSS attacks. XSS can cause a variety of problems for the end user that range in severity from an annoyance to complete account compromise. The most severe XSS attacks involve disclosure of the user's session cookie, allowing an attacker to hijack the user's session and take over the account. Other damaging attacks include the disclosure of end-user files, installation of Trojan horse programs, redirecting the user to some other page or site, or modifying presentation of content. An XSS vulnerability allowing an attacker to modify a press release or news item could affect a company's stock price or lessen consumer confidence. An XSS vulnerability on a pharmaceutical site could allow an attacker to modify dosage information, resulting in an overdose. For more information on these types of attacks, please, you can see content spoofing. So how to determine if you are vulnerable to any kind of XSS flaws is difficult, right? It's not easy. The best way to find flaws is to perform a security review of the code and search for all places where input from an HTTP request could possibly make its way into the HTML output. Note that a variety of different HTML tags can be used to transmit a malicious JavaScript. Nessus, Nikto, and some other available tools can help scan a website for these flaws, but can only scratch the surface. If one part of a website is vulnerable, then there is a high likelihood that there are other problems as well. So how to protect yourself? The primary defenses against XSS are described in the OWASP XSS prevention cheat sheet. Also, it's crucial that you turn off HTTP trace support on all web servers. An attacker can steal cookie data via JavaScript even when document.cookie is disabled or not supported by the client. This attack is mounted when a user posts a malicious script to a forum, so when another user clicks the link, an asynchronous HTTP trace call is triggered, which collects the user's cookie information from the server and then sends it over to another malicious server that collects the cookie information, so the attacker can mount a session hijack attack. This is easily mitigated by removing support for HTTP trace on all web servers. The OWASP SAPI project has produced a set of reusable security components in several languages, including validation and escaping routines to prevent perimeter tampering and the injection of XSS attacks. In addition, the OWASP Web GOAT project training application has lessons on cross-site scripting and data encoding. So what do you think? Let me know your thoughts. Thank you for your viewership. Please hit the notification bell. Please click the subscribe button. I love you. Stay safe. Hack pack. You a hack pack. You a hack pack. You a hack pack. You a hack pack.